people like Adrella, Regina, Lily Savage were superheroes, and they were cheerleaders.
I'm Gay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, a podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. Joe Pop is an artist, music fan, and punk rock DJ that was born and bred in London. We spoke about the Black Cap, a legendary bar in Camden Town, London, which was open from the mid-1960s until it closed in 2015.
I remember the Black Cap in Camden had been a gay pub since, I'm saying the 60s, but possibly beforehand, I'm sure. I first walked in there, because it's in the era I was born and grew up in. First time I went there was about 1979, when I was 16, 17. And I walked in and I was this punk kid who was... my thing has always been that I was, from a young age, I knew I was gay and I was quite sort of fine with that, but I was trying to find how to be gay. Where was my tribe? Where were my people? And I remember walking into the Black Cap in 1979 and it not being full of people in leather jackets and spiky hair like me. It was full of, well, at the time it seemed like everyone seemed to have a check shirt and a moustache. I'm sure it was much more disparate than that, but that's how it felt.
Oh, how times have changed.
It was, but it was overwhelmingly, but then also I was young and everything was overwhelming to me at that time. So I remember going there on a Sunday lunchtime, which was, the Black Cap was always very well known for Sunday lunchtime stuff. So anyway, so I tried that once and I didn't go back there for a long time. I was a punk kid and I was looking for my tribe and my people. And so let's carry on more. So anyway, my life gets to the point of being about 1990. And I start going to the Black Cap quite often because it's not far from where I live. I would have been, I'm just trying to think, I'm in my late 20s, early 30s. I was born in 62, so I'm talking from about 90 onwards. So say a window between 90 to 95. I should point out, and I really want to emphasise, that my memories, and particularly my time frame, is all a bit soaked in cider. So I will sometimes get dates and events and things a bit blended or a bit mistaken. But,
well, there's no one here to argue with you.
Exactly. Oh, I don't know. Someone will go, no, that happened. Anyway, I was in a relationship. I was at college. I went to college as a mature student. Things were coming together for me in London after a fairly tricky 20s. My late 20s and 30s were where I started to feel more myself. I started to finally find, make the friends that I wanted and was doing the things that I wanted. I had a relationship with somebody I wanted to be with at the time. It felt, after a long time, the 80s in particular were a tough time for me, or a difficult time. I just didn't find where I wanted to be, or I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. From about 1990 onwards, I started to be a lot more happy and enjoying my life more. In my memory, it was the things I liked about it was big enough that there was quite a few people there, but it wasn't so big like going to somewhere like Heaven, which was, felt like a sports centre with a mirror ball. Other things I liked about it were really disparate. It was lots of different types of people. Being Camden, there was, slightly more punky people as well. It was, at the time, I think, one of the few places to have a late licence after 11. So it became very popular with a wide range of people. And like anywhere, you go somewhere enough, it becomes familiar and it becomes comfortable. I remember things like, and again, my memory of dates is rotten, they extended the upstairs There hadn't been an upstairs bar, I think, at one point, and then there was an upstairs bar and it was quite small, and then it got extended and made a lot bigger and had an outside terrace. And again, I can't remember exactly when this all happened, but suddenly it became physically a much nicer place. You know, you could smoke outside on the terrace. There was more room, and it was just a fun place to be. And it felt, even at the time, with places like Soho and Vauxhall were starting to come into their own as well, an awful lot of the pubs and places felt like you went to one particular place and you would meet a certain type of person. At the Black Cap, it always felt like it was much more mixed. The Black Cap seemed to have... I liked it because there seemed to be more women. It was just generally much more of a mixed crowd, which I've always found... my life is a mixed crowd. I like to be places which reflect that.
Yeah.
Also, as well, it wasn't very... because... See, in the 80s, there were gay pubs everywhere. There were ones in, Wood Green. There were everywhere, as opposed to concentrated in really small metropolitan areas like Vauxhall and Soho. And the Black Cap hung on like that as being, Camden is compared to the West End, is still a suburb. So you've got a very mixed crowd of people. You've got people that, for instance, came from further out, and their idea of coming into town was to come to the Black Cap. So you would meet people that came from Hertfordshire, Potter's Bar, Barnet, these sort of places that maybe didn't have their own gay pubs. So their idea of going to the West End was to come to Camden. I remember a friend of mine saying to me, it's like being in a gay pub in Portsmouth. And it is, just like a mixture of people, it always felt less posy than, say, something in the West End.
Just for anyone who isn't familiar with the venue, can you describe physically what
right,
it's like?
Physically what it was like. And again, it went through quite a few permutations and was developed and what have you, but I'll talk about what I remember the place as when I went mostly, and that was towards the end, and that was because the venue is now closed. It closed a few years ago.
Yeah.
How it was towards the end, but I think it was easily the last 10 years or so. So you walked, it was a very old pub. The pub had been there for years. And what I liked about it was right slap bang in the middle of Camden High Street. Everyone knew it was a gay pub. And towards the end, they had rainbow flags in the windows and things. It was very obvious. It wasn't, as time changed, it was very much part of the Camden landscape. So you walked in to this imposing pub and you were in a foyer, and in front of you were double doors that took you into the lower bar, which was more the club area. I know that in days that I can't really remember, the venue was only downstairs. Mm-hmm. But how I remembered it later was it was a nightclub sort of bar venue. You walked in, it was a long, thin room. There was a bar running down the side of the right, and then it opened out into a slightly larger sort of dance floor space, and there was a stage. One thing I should say about the Black Cap is that it was mostly known as being, it was the London Palladium of drag. It was very, very well known for drag acts in the same way that the RVT on the other side of the river had been. So you had the downstairs bit, and there, for instance, the walls of the whole place, downstairs and upstairs, were framed with enormous photos of drag queens from the years gone by, mostly 60s and 70s and 80s, including some beautiful, huge photos of famous drag queens, like from the 60s, Mrs. Shufflewick, and then from the 70s, the Disappointer Sisters and Regina Fong, and I think that Lily Savage, but then lots of other drag queens who were much more, less widely known, but were very much cherished. Adrella. I remember lots of photos, which I really liked. I love those pictures now I think about it, how important they were. So you had this downstairs, and then there was quite a big sweeping staircase that went upstairs. And you went into the upstairs bar, which I remember it being smallish, and then it got extended. It was a big bar, had a lot of space, and then it opened into a outside space garden. And it was all a decent size. Like I said, it was big enough to be interesting and have enough people to keep you interested, but also not a huge aircraft hangar. Yeah. So anyway, that's physically what it was like.
Okay, so if we go back to Joe at that time, you were in a relationship?
I was. When I say that, is like being a gay man in London, finally a lot of disparate things were coming together. And the relationship was with someone I'm not with now, but at the time we both gave each other courage to go out and do things and find things. Also, London was changing as well. There were more options.
And what do you mean by that, more options?
Places that we wanted, right, a combination of, I think, the type of places to go out became more varied. Plus also that I less probably needed everything to be exactly like I wanted. And I was braver and more gregarious and more social. So I'm in my late 20s. Everything took I think this is a familiar story with lots of gay men, is like everything takes longer. You're in a your adolescence seems to go on longer,
Yeah.
So I had a partner and we gave each other courage to explore things together. And I was meeting people who were other disparate, self-perceived gay misfits, people who I still am good friends with now. And that was, having comrades and having friends. And that was lovely. And we all lived vaguely near each other. The Black Cat was a good place for us to go to. And I think that the reason that we would go there together was, geographically, it was easy. And I think that they probably would all like it for the same reason I do. It was disparate. It was fun. It was cheap. Drinks would be cheaper than the West End. Also, though it was very easy to get sex at the Black Cap, it was not the primary reason that people went.
I'm writing down get sex now, just so you know.
I'll come to that.
I'm going to be asking about that later.
Yeah, it was very easy, but that was part of the deal, not all the deal. A lot of the men's bars in town.
Yeah.
That was the primary reason.
Yeah, there's a very clear driver to be there, yeah.
Whereas at the Black Cap, I'll come into it, but the gist of it was night, evening, fun. Literally, okay, 11 o'clock, we'd all split up and look moody in a corner. But that would be...
Oh, what a shame that there's no visual here, because I'd ask you to show me your moody face.
Oh, it's the same as everybody's moody face. Don't worry. It's one that basically says I'm mean and unapproachable, but at the same time, come and approach me. It's always that thing of like, that man over there obviously looks like he wants to kill you, so he obviously fancies you.
God, when I was newly exploring that face and its use in public spaces, everyone would just come up to me and be like, "Oh, cheer up, it might not happen." Like, fucking hell, that's not what I want.
Ironically, I think the best face to pick up is a smile. But it just takes you a while to work that one out.
Yeah. And it depends, how over-eager you look with your smile.
Oh, God. No wonder apps are so popular these days. We're also talking about a time before apps.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a time when people had to actually go out to have contact with other gay people. I remember in my journey before like I said, I was always out to myself and my friends, but I could never quite work out how to do my gay life. In the 80s, for instance, personal ads in City Limits was very much part of what I did and what.
And so, what is City Limits? Is that like a timeout, or is that
City Limits was, yes. What happened was there was timeout. I think I've got this right. Timeout went into some industrial action, and all the journalists went on strike. All the big journalists went and started up City Limits. And so, yes, City Limits came out of Timeout, and City Limits was always perceived to be the cooler version of Timeout, and then I think it doesn't exist. But in those days, in a pre-internet world, City Limits was, if you wanted to do anything gay, that's where you found, apart from the free press, which I always found seems to always lag behind, or you had to specifically go to the gay pubs to get them. Mm-hmm. But Time Out or City Limits for listings, but also the contacts. They used to call them Lonely Hearts in those days. And I met my first long-time boyfriend through one of those.
Oh wow! And the listings, it's just words, isn't it? There's no photos or anything.
Just words, no photo, and you have the PO box number.
And so, what attracted you to his ad, or did he respond to your ad?
No, I responded to his ad. And I kept it for years. And the words were, gay man. I know he knocked 2 years off his life. 29.
Why even bother? 2 years?
I think that just the thought of being 30 in those days was quite overwhelming. I would have been 27 or 28 or something like that. I remember he was into, it was like gay man into, and then there was a list of things. This is a very typical thing. Into, and they would list cultural things you like. Seek similar, and I can remember his would have involved. I know it said Warhol. This is typical. It said Warhol. Oh, it probably said something like Fassbinder. I'm just remembering him. Fassbinder and Jean Genet, or sort of like arty gay sort of cultural things. Because he was a very arty gay cultural thing, and it would have referenced music as well. And it would have been like, it would probably have been Bowie or something like that, because we all did that. His advert spoke exactly to me. Ironically, of course, we were totally different people, but our cultural interests were, in fact, our cultural shared interests held us together for many more years than our actual relationship did. So that's what happened. Besides that, if you wanted to meet people, you went out. If you want, having said that, I very rarely. So if we're talking about the Black Cap, I had a lot of sex from the Black Cap, but I don't think I very rarely went there to look for sex. It was always, I was in a relationship. It was an open relationship, and we also didn't live together. So there was quite a lot of opportunities for me to have sex. But for me, going out to the Black Cap, I can remember going there, on the prowl with my thumbs in my belt loops. But a lot less. It was always something that happened at the end of the evening. But also, I had this thing. I've got a memory of having a conversation with this friend of mine, which was the dignity in toast idea. And what it was when you were staying late, because that's what used to happen a lot at the Black Cap. Is what I was saying. You would spend your time with your friends. We'd go down. I haven't even got into going downstairs to what happened downstairs. But at the end of the night, when everyone suddenly stops smiling and chatting to their friends and runs into corners to look mean and moody, there was that point where, were you too drunk? Or was everybody else too drunk? And there was a thing of like, it's okay to just pick yourself up and go home and have toast. Do you know what I mean? You didn't have to. And that's something that has actually done me quite good. It's a case of like, is everyone else too desperate, or are you too desperate? Or if it's not right, it's fine to go home.
And so you talked before about Black Cat being a famous drag bar. What was your relationship with drag? What were your... I worded that in a strange way, sorry.
Why did I like it, or what did I think of it? Or...
Yeah.
In the 80s in particular, and I'm sort of getting the tail end of this, I think to a certain extent, but not quite the same, there were... Right now, there's a ton of drag queen. Everyone's a drag queen.
Yeah.
Right. In my day, the drag was quite... My day, this time... There were fewer drag queens, and they were professional entertainers.
Yeah.
Nearly all of them were basically comics in a dress. That's a very traditional, from the panto tradition. But they were cheerleaders for the gay scene. They were our pop stars. They were our own counterculture stars. And there was a few that were really big. The biggest ones were Lily Savage, who ruled the roost at the RVT. I always remember Tuesday nights was this drag queen called Regina Fong. If you go on YouTube, put Regina Fong, you'll see her act. She had all the patter, but she used to lip sync, and she used to do these little cut up, things that are very prevalent now, cut up tapes with bits of dialogue from adverts and famous lines from films, and she would do these little 3-minute funny narrative things, but it was her repertoire, and people would shout in the audience for the ones that they wanted, the one that was... And quite a lot of them involved audience participation. There was one which was where we would all... She would lead us all through singing along to Skippy the Bush Kangaroo, and there was a dance step that, we would all do. And there were hand actions and things, you could be in on it. Yeah. If you were a regular, you could be part of it. So it was hugely celebratory. Very little of her her character was, she was the last of the Romanovs and she ran away from the Winter Palace clutching a Fabergé. There was some backstory that was very rarely discussed. And the whole fact that she was in drag was not really part of what she did, though obviously the cut-ups of the characters and the dialogue was female character, Joan Crawford, and suddenly the Shake and Vac advert, and then Cilla Black, and then lines from something like a film, classic films like Black Narcissus or something like that. There was a bit which was from the film Thoroughly Modern Millie, and there's the bit where she does typewriting. So she had that music, and everybody would put their hands up and play imaginary typewriters. It was hugely joyous, very skillful and tribal, and it felt like... It was something that when I had friends that came from abroad or from out of town, I would take them to see Regina Fong at the Black Cap. Talking to her, quite emotional about this and thinking about this time. And it was very uplifting and joyous. I'll give you an example. The end song every night. At the end, she'd have guests in the show. Or I'd be talking about Jade, this black drag queen who, in retrospect, I'm pretty sure was a trans woman. She always come on, and she was a regular guest, but there were other guests, and they'd come and do turns and what have you. And then at the end, they would all come on stage, and the same song, which is called Tell Him What I Said, Tell Me What I Said, Tell Him What I Said, I can't remember, by Helen Shapiro, which is a lovely, big, boomy 60s pop song. It was a traditional thing that everyone would rush, all the performers would come on stage, they would all lip sync to this record, which had a hand jive action. Okay. But there's also a movement where, I'm explaining this really badly, where people would lean on each other. People would get into, if you can imagine, like get into a conga line, but all lean. There was a sad bit in the song, and everyone would lean on each other's shoulders, and then turn around and lean on the person behind them.
Okay. Like in a sobbing type.
It was, yes, it's sort of like a dramatic, because the song's all about he left me, or whatever it is. People who know what I'm talking about will know exactly what I'm talking about. But anyway, this record, Tell Me What He Said, which is this big 60s song, I play it quite often at the end of my sets when I DJ, and if people who suddenly little groups of middle-aged people will start reenacting this movement. And it was when I started DJing, for instance, I didn't know what this song was called. I just knew that it was called, I remember it took me a long time to Google to actually find out what it was, because I remember the song, but it's not a very well-known song. Yeah. And when I found it, I was so thrilled. And like I said, when I DJ, I play it at the end of my sets, and it really means a lot to people. And that was just fantastic. And I'm sure that there'll be an equivalent now that other people are doing. Mm. And there will be old pop songs that frame people's experiences.
That's the incredible thing about music, isn't it? Yeah. Just that ability to transport you.
Yes. Yeah. And that song now, whenever I hear it, I've played it quite a lot now when I DJ, so the effect of it, taking the shine off for me, no, it doesn't. But like I said, whenever I do my little DJings and I play it at the end and people suddenly come rushing up to you and say, oh my God, or my friends, the friends who I had at the time, who I still have now, and I'm DJing at the Retro Bar and I play, this at the end, and suddenly, Sadie and Jonathan and Matthew all jump up and start running around doing it. It's lovely, that's something that's quite important to me. Regina was a huge, they called when they opened the outdoor garden upstairs, it was called the Fong Terrace. Yeah. And Regina Fong, who used to see quite often at the Black Cap, I remember seeing her walk. She was very tall, very grand bloke, walking out with some bloke, and she was showing him around, and she basically said, yeah, they named it after me. There was also another story, which I hope is true, and I think I saw a version of it, which was a lot of the big drag queens used to all meet up on a Monday because they'd worked hard all weekend, and they would all meet up on a Monday afternoon together at the Black Cap and all get paralytically drunk. And I think I saw them. I definitely saw Regina out of drag, drunk at the Black Cap, but I don't remember if she was at a table with other off-duty drag queens. But apparently they would all gather on a Monday upstairs and all get hammered with their friends. I don't know if it was every Monday, but But it's a good story anyway. So downstairs, right, we would go downstairs. We had our hands stamped to not pay the £1.50 or whatever it was. The music that was played there was always, what you'd call commercial dance music, what I'd call a disco remix of a top 40 pop hit. Yeah. Not necessarily my remit, but it's what you expect, and probably in a gay bar like that, I would be quite surprised if it wasn't. Disappointed if it wasn't. And I've had some epiphanies. There are some great records. You Make Me Feel by Made It Mighty Real by Sylvester, but also I'm very fond of things like those really simple dance records that are almost like gay folk songs. Like This Is the Rhythm of the Night. This is the rhythm of my life. Everybody's free to feel good. Yeah. I think these are sort of 90s dance songs, which when you listen to them now, I find them quite charming, and they remind me of a certain time. Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent and Grace Jones records, and again, these weren't real. I was much more into rock music and punk music, but these records are of a time and a place, and were great pleasure. Downstairs, we would go down and see, I'm just trying to remember exactly, besides Regina, we would just go down and see. Regina was somebody who I made a point of going for, and if I remember rightly, it was on a Tuesday night. Other nights was different. I remember Sunday nights was always quite good. Either Sunday or Monday used to have cheap drinks deals. And I remember that was a night when you go and got hammered. And that was when you ended up.
Next to the off-duty drag queens getting hammered as well.
Probably. There was a lot of drinking, I remember. But these cheap drink nights were always the nights when you ended up snogging someone that come in from St Albans or something like that. I remember some of the performers. There was one that I really liked. She's a female cabaret singer called Kelly Wilde. And she's still doing the gay scene now. And she's, for want of a better word, imagine Bonnie Tyler. She has a very raspy Bonnie Tyler, strong nightclub voice. And she was hugely entertaining. She would come out and she would I think she recorded things like disco versions of Holding Out for a Hero and things like that. And she's a very traditional gay pub entertainer. Anyway, and she had one night I'm particularly thinking of. This is a story. This is a set piece. She had a night, and a weekly night, a monthly night, and then she always had a guest singer. It would quite often be the female vocalist who was dance records that would have a female vocalist, and the female vocalist would come along. I remember this young black woman standing there with her hands on her hips saying, "Okay, people," she said, "I'm on my period and my weave's falling out, but I'm going to do my best for you." But there's one particular night I think this is 94. Anyway, Pete Burns was coming to do a PA.
Oh, wow.
Right. And now this is at a point where Pete Burns had the initial impact with Dead or Alive, with That's the Way I Like It, and even You Spin Me Round Like a Record. And then he went away for a few years. And in a pre-internet world and a pre-celebrity obsessed world, we didn't know what...
Just fallen off the face of the earth.
Yeah, just fallen off the face of the earth. Me and my friends still talk about this event. So we all went to see what Pete Burns was like. And I remember we got there, the place was packed, and it was full of similar people to myself, similar age, or people who wanted to know, "Oh, Pete Burns is back. Let's go and see what this is." So we're there in a very packed black cab. And what I remember was Pete Burns arrived, like half an hour before he was due to go on stage. And he, who was very tall and was probably wearing stilettos, was led through a crowd with his hand on the shoulder of somebody, I think a woman who might have been his wife. And he was led through the crowd and he had his head down. In my mind, I've got it, he was like covered in a blanket. But I don't think it was quite that. But he was led through the crowd and disappeared backstage. But it was like, they were bringing in the monster, the thing, whatever. And he came in, and I think they tried to do it really low-key, but, we parted for this apparition to come through, but we couldn't really see. So anyway, the show started, and Kelly comes out in her Diamante Bustier and sings something like a disco remake of something like Earth Song by Michael Jackson or something like that.
Well, that's crying out for a disco remake.
It was quite insane. And then she said, and now, we often have here people, stars coming up, stars coming down, but tonight we have a legend. And she introduced Pete Burns. And he came on stage, bang, the lights came on. And he'd had all the surgery, which we'd not seen before. He had his hair, or his wig, was like this long black hair with a Cleopatra fringe. His face was full of piercings, I seem to remember. His arms were all covered in tattoos. And he was wearing, in my mind, because it was difficult to see through the crowd, but he was wearing like a silver 50s party dress. It was gender fuck of a high, level at a point where you haven't really seen much of this. Yeah. And he came out live. His energy is really punky. The vocals, which are very strong and, harsh in a way. It was incredible. It was overwhelming. Well, not overwhelming, in a good way. It was fantastic. He came out, did a couple of songs. I remember he was pulling muscle poses. Because I think, and he obviously did weight training because he had big muscle. So here he was in this extraordinary drag, muscled and tattooed. It was like nothing I'd seen before. It was just incredible. And he yelled, a couple of songs. We were all like pinned against the wall by his force, by his energy. And that was fantastic. That was really quite jaw-dropping. It was a space where I did some growing and some bonding with some people. My memories are more about my friends. Though we obviously would chat with other people, I remember about us being, me and my friends, but it was a place of bonding for us. So I can remember being with my friends. It was a place where we really built, I think we really strengthened a friendship, and it was good for that. I think we were all finding our way into the gay world, how to be gay men. And we were all similarly interested, culturally, the same sort of music and art and things like that, though we're all quite different as people. And we took that as a starting point. You know, oh, you're interested in the same record as me, then we might have something in common.
Yeah.
Though we're all quite different people from very different backgrounds, we built a friendship that started off on the fact that we all liked Susie and the Banshees and that we were all gay, but we had enough to build on to then become good friends. I am thinking about Much Love friends who, you know, I'm 50, a couple of us are mid-50s and the others are early 50s, and we have known each other since about this time, late 80s, early 90s.
Did you ever go to the Black Cap and have photos or stories that you want to share? If you do, then please get in touch through any of my social media channels, so Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, with the user handle KAndersonMusic. I'd love to have a conversation. And if you'd like to find out more about Joe, you are in luck. He co-hosts a show on Shoreditch Radio with DJ Sue Grant, and you can find previous episodes of the show listed at www.mixcloud.com/Sue-Grant. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but it is also a concept record. Ooh. I have been working on songs and stories about different people and different queer spaces and how their lives intersect. And I'm going to be releasing those songs over the coming year. You can hear the first single from the set, Well Groomed Boys, which is also the theme song and the thing that's playing underneath my talking right now, on Spotify or iTunes or any of the other online music platforms. If you enjoyed today's episode and you want to hear more, then please do subscribe. It would also make a huge difference if you have the time to share the podcast on your social media or to tell friends about it, or even leave a review on the iTunes store. My name is Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.